It's Neeraj, you can start now.
Yeah, just give us a minute, right, Nilesh. Once a few more people join in, then we can start.
Yeah, sure, sir.
Not more than 2 3 minutes. Yeah, let's kick off, Sneha. To start off.
So, hello everyone. This is Sneha from Pharmaceuticals, a business consulting and market research firm which is solely focused towards pharmaceutical markets. The company consults and researches majorly into chronic disease indications prevalent across the globe. So, here we are today. We are here to discuss digital transformation in pharmaceuticals, wherein we will be discussing on the challenges and opportunities of digital transformation in healthcare and pharmaceutical and also across industries. We will look forward to discussing this with Andy Kinnair, who is ex-CIO and Director of Digital Transformation at NHS South Central West CSU. Thanks for joining us, Andy, today. To start with, can we have a little bit of brief about yourself, Andy?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sneha, and thanks for the invite to come and talk to you all. It's great to be joining you from sunny England, where I can look out my window and see it snowing at the moment. So great to be here. As you mentioned, I had a long career working in the National Health Service in England. I worked there for about just over 30 years. I was a CIO or in CIO-like seats for about 20 of those. My last job was Director of Digital Transformation for South Central West, and we managed about 400 programs delivering digital projects into healthcare settings. I have to say up front, I've not got tons and tons of knowledge of the pharmaceutical industry, but I certainly know where it interacts with with the National Health Service in England, and hopefully I can draw some stories together from that. These days I spend my time doing two things. I work providing consultancy services with a company called Ethical Healthcare, and then most of my work is actually for the College of Health Information Management Execs, or CHIME, helping them to develop leadership programs for people who find themselves in roles like I had, either CIOs or clinical CIOs or Chief Nursing Information Officers, people like that. So it's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andy. So, according to you, what is digital transformation and what is the need of this digital transformation across industries and organizations in the current scenario?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great question, a very open-ended question, I think. But for me, if we look around, industry by industry has been transformed over the last couple of decades through digital adoption and through taking new technologies and applying them into their industry. In a way that they'd not done that before. And I think they've pulled off a really clever trick, because what they've done is they've started to shift work that they used to do for us as their customers. They've shifted that work over to us in a way where we feel more empowered. So if you think about it, when you used to book your holidays, 20 years ago, you'd actually go to a shop on the high street. Somebody else would do all the booking for you. You would just look at a brochure, pick the picture of the holiday you wanted. They would sort out your flights, your boarding passes, your hotel, your transfers. Everything would be done for you by somebody else, and then you would work out there with a confirmation that your holiday had been booked. Now we do all of that ourselves. We sit on the Google and search for, Airbnbs, or we search for flights, or we print our own boarding passes, or we download them onto our phones. We're doing all the work that the travel industry used to do for us. And yet somehow we feel happier about that. We feel more empowered. If you look at some sectors, they've taken it even further. You get to, go to supermarkets these days, and you end up working on the tills. You're only on the till for one customer, yourself. But mainly you've been digitally empowered through the scanners that they've put in place. to allow you to get in and out of that shop quicker. And so I think the journey in healthcare is lagging behind, in truth. Certainly in healthcare in the UK, compared to other industry sectors, we're nowhere near that place where our clients, our customers, the patients and public we serve are digitally supported in the way we are in other industry sectors. And I think digital transformation for healthcare for me is giving people the same level of customer service they receive from Amazon or Google or from Uber or from Airbnb or from all of these other things that they interact with in their lives, and ensuring that they get the same level of service and same level of satisfaction when they engage with healthcare. And I think that's the journey we're on. Is how do we do that in a devilishly complicated environment that is health and care.
Okay. So how these healthcare industries and pharmaceutical organizations are adopting this digital transformation?
So I think we're seeing a couple of drivers. I think one is the sort of demand driver for me. So I think, like I said, I think 10 years ago, so when I was sitting in a CIOC, I didn't feel under huge pressure from the public to give them a better digital service. In truth, I think that the pressure in my work was largely around the provider organisations making sure that we got the information we needed to manage the delivery of healthcare. I think what we've seen change over the last 10 or 15 years really has been that the public expectation of the services that are provided, regardless of industry now, whether this is travel, finance, you name it, right through to pharmaceutical, through to healthcare, through to everything. Our expectation is that we can manage that part of our life on our smartphone in a way that we do for the most progressive elements. And I think so. What we're starting to see in healthcare, I think, is changes that are pushing us in that direction. So how do we serve our people better? How do we make sure that we've got the information they need at their fingertips when they need it? How do we make sure they can book appointments, change appointments, cancel appointments, whatever, as and when they need it? And in the case of pharma, how do we make sure that the prescription process, the access to drugs and medicine is transformed from being, certainly currently in the UK, it's still very common for people to be issued with a paper prescription, or at best a sort of digital tag, and trot off to their high street pharmacy and collect their medications in a fairly old-fashioned way. I think that feels ancient compared to the service that you get from many other sectors now. And I think we'll see huge transformations in retail pharmacy as part of this journey. In fact, I know some of that is already starting to reach that high street.
Right. So are there any broad trends connected with this in the pharmaceutical industry? Like how different are these in pharmaceutical, healthcare, and the other industries across the globe?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think I'm seeing two sort of trends really. I mean, there are lots of trends within that, but two sort of major patterns really. One is the sort of traditional incumbent supplier community. So if I think about what's happening in the healthcare sector, the traditional hospital trusts in the National Health Service, or the traditional general practices and things like that, are desperately trying to digitally transform, but are often struggling in two ways. Firstly, they were born out of this old world, and so lots of the people that work there, their mindset is set on the way that things used to be done and the way that they used to work. The second thing is that that it's like the plane's already in the sky. Because it's already flying, you've somehow got to try and transform and keep the thing flying at the same time. So these people are sort of hindered by the fact that they've got to keep the services running in the way they're running currently, and yet also try and transform into a modern world. And so that's kind of almost like one sector. And my sense is, certainly with retail pharmacy companies that I've dealt with in the UK, is that they are having exactly that same challenge. So they've got this legacy high street estate, all of these shops that are sitting there in town centres up and down the country with staff that have worked there for donkey's years, and a sort of way of working that's really deeply embedded and sort of ingrained. Meanwhile, an ambition as a company to transform into something that's much more digitally enabled and digitally sort of firepowered. So you've got that one big trend going on with the traditional cohort, if you like. Meanwhile, you've got this massive disruptor community coming in from left field, who are basically saying, well, we haven't got any of that old world, we haven't got any of that bureaucracy, we haven't got the established market that we need to sort of protect and look after. We can sort of come to this agenda, in a brand new way, with a fresh face, with a fresh eyes on it, and things like that. And we're starting to see companies pop up over here that might not offer the full comprehensive range of pharmaceutical solutions. They might just deal with one very niche set of problems. There's a company popped up around called Newman, and they literally deal with kind of men's health. It's very, very focused onto 2 or 3 sort of key conditions that might concern men, and yet part of that offering includes providing the medications, doing the pathology. They'll send out a blood test. They'll do they'll analyze what you need, and then they'll recommend the sort of supplements and the drugs that you need to go on. It's a really niche offering. The whole thing happens online. You never deal with a person. You're dealing with you're sitting on your phone doing the whole exercise, and they've just carved off half of 1% or whatever it is, a tiny little segment of the industry, of the business, and said, well, we're gonna improve the way we do that, and we're gonna take it to a new level, and that's what they're doing. And I think those two trends, the traditionalist versus the disruptor, is really what I'm witnessing at the moment.
Okay. This artificial intelligence is also a part of this, right, Andy? Artificial intelligence, blockchain.
Well, exactly. Again, yeah. So we're also seeing that adoption of those new technologies, but it's a the story there, because what we've got is still got some legacy estate that we've invested in. So a whole heap of legacy software, legacy applications that have all been sort of built and that we've now become reliant on. So in a traditional hospital in the UK, you would typically find between 200 and 300 different software applications necessary to keep that hospital running. Okay, so you guys would probably be familiar with some of the ones around electronic prescribing, or the robotic processes for issuing drugs and things like that. But across the entire hospital, it wouldn't be uncommon to find somewhere between 200 and 300 separate clinical systems operating, all of which are collecting information on patients, all of which are sort of critical to the day-to-day running of the hospital. Meanwhile, as you've said, an ambition, certainly shared by most CIOs, an ambition to move towards far more modern, agile, innovative new ways of working that might include artificial intelligence applications, or might include the use of distributed registries through blockchain or things like that, or might include all kinds of other snazzy stuff that we haven't even thought of, like ambient voice recognition, or all of these things that are going on at the same time. And so you're seeing this sort of major effort to something else going there. You've seen this major effort to sort of try and move to that world, whilst not disrupt the world that you've already got running, in the background. And I think that, in a nutshell, is the digital transformation challenge of any industry. My sort of I suppose my bugbear in health is that firstly, it's incredibly complicated, a lot more complicated than most industries, and secondly, the scale of change required and the budget required to make that change is significant, and certainly in the UK is nowhere near the investment levels we need to make that change successfully at the moment.
Right. So, Andy, how does digital transformation can be adopted across the functions and value chains in the healthcare industry?
Yeah, so I think I'm glad you kind of used the word adoption, actually, because quite a lot of these kind of conversations I have with people, they start by talking about the need for innovation. And I'm not saying we should stop innovating. I'm definitely not saying that, but I've got enough innovation to last me a lifetime at the moment. I think the challenge is to actually get the innovation adopted and being utilised across the services, and being utilised in a way that is meaningful and impactful and successful. And I think I took quite a while to work out that that in my job as a CIO in healthcare, it was to make the lives of my doctors and nurses the best they could be, to give them the best digital experience they could get, to make sure that they got the information they needed to treat the patients in the best way possible. And I came in, I'm a bit of a fraud as a CIO because I'm not particularly technical at all. I came in as a statistician originally. I was a numbers person, right back in the beginning of my career, and I've always been quite keen to measure progress, to actually get numbers. Let's have a look at how we are really doing compared to what the evidence would suggest. And one of the more interesting projects I've been involved in over the last few years has been working with a company called Class Research, KLAS Research, Class Research. They're based in the US. They've got a program called the Arch Collaborative. You can go and look it up online. It's a really interesting piece of work. And essentially what they're doing is they're inviting healthcare organisations around the world to for their clinical workforce, their doctors and nurses, to take a survey to describe how satisfied they are with their digital experience in their organisation. And then the results of that survey are compared globally. And I think it makes for fascinating reading, because what you're actually starting to see is organisations that have invested hugely in digital applications aren't necessarily that much further ahead in terms of the clinical satisfaction part of the story, because actually what you've really got to do is also invest in the clinical experience, in their training, in their development, in their, we were joking before we came on this call about how little we all know about Teams and how to use, Microsoft Teams. It's a great example. We're probably only using about 5% of its capability, most of us. And I think that's true of clinical software, and I'm sure this is true in the pharmaceutical industry as well. If you look at your end user, community, the degree to which those folks have been invested in to get the best out of the software that we've already got in place. And I think that that Arch Collaborative work has been really useful for me to be able to demonstrate to people you may well have done a great job of buying software, and you may well have done a great job of deploying that software technically into your organisation, but your clinical community are still fairly unhappy. So what's going on? It's that end point of the journey that we've got to go. And I think if you're going to come back to your question, which is about releasing the value, well, in healthcare, releasing the value means doctors and nurses are making quicker, faster, safer decisions than they were making previously about the patients they're treating. And so, it's really about supporting those guys first and foremost, rather than getting hung up on the sort of technology aspects.
Right. So, what are the successful implementation or use cases of this digital transformation in the healthcare industry?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, I think we've done quite a good job. I mean, not everywhere, but I think we've done quite a good job of deploying electronic patient records and the suite of software that sits around those patient records. So within that, I would include the prescribing systems, the kind of pharmacy support systems that we've seen in place, the order communications, and so on and so forth. So that suite of EPR, electronic patient record software, has been largely, I would say, deployed now. There's pockets where it still needs to happen. But what we've also done is we've done quite a bad job of joining them up. So what we've done, certainly in the UK, is we've deployed one EPR in the hospital, a different one in the community setting, a different one in the general practice, a different one in the mental health service, a different one in social care. And so a patient that might be interacting with all of those services is finding their information is locked into 5 or 6 or 10 or 20, whatever it might be, silos where the information is not being shared. And I think the projects I've been sort of most interested in watching over the last decade really have been where they've been focused on joining those silos of electronic patient record together, joining them up in a way that allows a doctor or a nurse in one setting to see information that was collected about their patient in a different setting. And if you look at this through the lens of doctors and nurses, their job is essentially to make a risk-based decision. Every time they see a patient, they are weighing up the risk of taking this action versus that action versus doing nothing. It's all about risk, and that risk is determined by the amount of information they can gather from the patient or from the patient's record around their condition, their history, their family background, whatever it might be, the information they need to support that. So the more relevant information we can make available to that doctor and nurse at that point of the interaction, the chances of them getting the right prescription sorted, giving them the right drugs, giving them the right treatment regime, so on and so forth, is increased. And I think where we've seen shared records, I was involved in a project called Connecting Care in Bristol, in the West Country of England. And we were joining 17 organisations together and sharing those records, and we've seen a lot of that type of activity across the UK. I think then the other end point of that is that somewhere down that journey, you also bring the patient on board. So rather than it just being information about the patient, it's actually information with the patient. And so we've started to see in our country the beginnings of programs that are rolling out what are called personal health records. So this is where patients are genuinely getting involved in contributing to and tracking their own their own health record. And I think that's quite an exciting transformation. Much of this, by the way, Snare, is really about building the infrastructure for a more exciting future. So I grant you the AI world, the blockchain world, all those worlds are offering much more exciting futures. But in truth, they need to be built on solid foundations. And I think lots of this activity is really about creating the foundations for that future.
So do they face any challenges in this? How do they overcome these challenges or restraints?
Yeah, I mean, seriously, how long have we got? I mean, I could spend about 2 hours talking to you the challenges of some of these projects. I was sort of sketching down a few earlier when I was thinking about coming to talk to you. I think there's been numerous, and I'll sort of try and highlight a few of the headline ones. I don't think we've always had the best political support, in truth. I think we've certainly in the UK we've seen successive governments supportive of trying to drive through digital transformation within healthcare, but really naive about the cost of it, the time it will take, the complexity of the challenge. And so I think they've unwittingly become a bit of a blocker because they've had somebody else online. Because they've had such ambition that's been unachievable really in the timescales that they've put on it. So I don't think that's helped. I think money is a blocker. The truth is, the UK in healthcare is a publicly funded health system. It's not as well funded as some of the other health systems around the planet, and getting investment in digital transformation has been a challenge. If you look at what the United States did with their meaningful use program, I mean, it's a stunning piece of work, and it really has been a game changer, across the US. But a huge investment. I mean, billions and billions and billions of dollars invested in that program. The kind of monies that the UK could only dream of. I think the third challenge really is these are people projects at their core. Whatever industry you're in, you're talking about changing the way people think, act, behave, and approach, the way they come to work. And I think, one of the challenges is realising that deploying the technology is like about 10% of the journey. The reality is actually bringing the whole of the dressing room and making sure all the people, are with you every step of the way, and accepting that takes time. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Bob Wachter from the United States. He wrote a great book about a decade ago called The Digital Doctor, and he talks about the adaptive change journey that goes on within healthcare. So this idea that when you introduce new technologies, clinicians, doctors and nurses, and pharmacists and everybody, all the sort of professional cohort, need to change the way they work. They need to adapt to that new technology, and that adaptive change takes time. So whilst you might have a prescribed view of how it's going to work, you need to wait for the everybody else to sort of move along that journey and catch up with you. So I think that's been a blocker. I don't think we've been very good at engaging our public. I think too often we've sort of been shied away from and been nervous about having a public debate around some of these issues, and I think that's wrong. I think this is something that it would be great to be in the in the public sphere. I know a space where that is interesting to the pharmaceutical industry is around access to data and the use of data that's being collected in health systems to support pharmaceutical research projects and things like that. And I think at times we've struggled to engage with the public on that subject. I think in the UK there's a nervousness and a scepticism around sharing NHS data with private sector organisations, but I think that's partly because we haven't done a very good job of coaching our public to understand why that might be a good thing. Who is it that's inventing all of these new drugs and helping us solve major healthcare issues? Well, it's big pharmaceutical companies, frankly, and if we don't work with them hand in glove and share the data that they need to do their jobs, then chances are the flow of new medicines is going to fail. So I think there's a public story. And then the last one I wrote on my list of sort of challenges, I think, is really around leadership. So where we've seen digital success in healthcare organisations in the NHS is where you can also see strong leadership. You can see a chief exec at the top of the organisation who's really bought into the digital agenda. You can see a really strong CIO and a good technical team deploying the technology, and you can see a bunch of clinical leaders who are ambitious for change and driven for a more sort of digital future. And I think where you haven't seen it, you haven't got those. And so for me, there is a real correlation between the quality of the leadership in place and the amount of success that an organisation will realise. And I'm sure that's true in every industry. And it's part of what motivated me to do the work I do with Chime, because we're all about growing next generation leaders and helping the leaders of today be even better. And I think if we can get sufficient high caliber leadership, the other challenges become immaterial, really. If you've got somebody who's energized and driven and focused, then in reality you'll get a level of success. So I think that's the challenges. But believe me, I could have talked for days on the things that make these projects hard. There's just a lot of subjects.
Right. So, how do you engage external partners to expedite this process, implementation of digital transformation into the healthcare industry?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think, I mean, the first sort of step on the road to recovery is to admit you've got a problem. And I think one of the challenges many health services have struggled with is admitting that they do need outside help. I think too often they've been sort of prepared to think, well, the answer needs to be something we invent ourselves and we work inside. And I think, so the first step on engaging with external partners is to recognise that you need them and that they bring value to the table and they are great to work with. I think I've sort of had three real secrets, I suppose, when it's come to working with external partners. I mean, the first one is to kiss a lot of frogs. I don't know if that phrase translates, but if you go kiss a frog, you want to see if it's going to turn into Prince Charming. And my tactic has been to kiss a lot of frogs and keep on kissing them. So spend a lot of time seeing what's out there, keeping your head above the parapet, looking to see what developments are ongoing, to see who's doing what, to see who's been successful in their digital transformations. Make a lot of effort to look beyond the boundaries of your organisation or your nation even, and to look globally and see what good things are going on, and to be prepared to kiss a few of those frogs, frankly. Go and engage with them and see whether you like what they're doing, you like the way they think, whether it'll work in your organisation, and so on and so forth. I think that's first secret. I think the second secret is to I've written sort of follow the energy, and I think what I mean by that is a digital transformation partnership with an external partner is likely to be a fairly long-term thing. It's likely to be a fairly taxing exercise. It's likely to be a real effort on both sides. So I think when I'm looking for partners to work with, I'm looking for energy. I'm looking for people who are really motivated, really driven. I've got, real energy and an ambition. And to be absolutely honest, Sneh, I would say that's true of internal partners as well. Many of the projects I've worked up with inside the NHS, I want to work with people who want to get stuff done, make it happen, are energised in the way I am. And I think, following that energy is a real secret. And then the last secret, and this will sound a bit almost emotional, and I think I hope it doesn't come across as trite, because I really do mean it. But when you're dealing with the healthcare industry, you're dealing with people who have chosen, at some point early in their lives, early in their careers, they have chosen to come and work in healthcare because they believe in the mission. Whatever country they're working in, they want to be part of the healthcare sector in that country. They want to be part of a family that is working to make the health of the nation better, that is working to look after, individuals, to look after people all the time. And I think when I've looked for partners, I've looked for partners who want to be part of that mission. So people who are absolutely committed to wanting to make the National Health Service in England better, who are motivated by the fact that what they get to do each day will improve the lives of, their friends, their family, their the people they know, their town, wherever it might be, and make healthcare better. And so I think, one of the ways of sort of really trusting and sort of, I suppose, building trust with a partner is to really test them on that commitment to the mission. I think, I can point at several companies I've worked with for, decades, frankly. And, I think when you peel it all away, you peel away the money, the contract, the various, sort of, commercial elements. Underneath, there is an absolute core belief in the mission that we both share, that we want to make the health of the people of the United Kingdom better. And I think, I would say to anybody, if you're engaging with an external partner, get those emotional connections right at the get-go. The energy, the belief, the mission, that kind of stuff. Believe me, the money, the contracts, the terms, all of that will look after itself if you are actually, united on that kind of core, foundation. So I hope that doesn't sound too soppy. It's not meant to sound like overly emotional or a little bit wet beyond the ears or whatever. But it's me essentially saying that these are human beings working with each other. And if you find kindred spirits that you can really work with, the chances are your partnership is going to be far more successful than otherwise.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Andy, for such an informative discussion. So we are open now for external questions. We can have some questions from the audience. Yeah.
Stun them into silence.
Any questions, audience?
I can start off from my question actually. So I mean, you discussed, gave a lot of information around how the journey works and what kind of challenges are there. So I mean, my question is, where does one start? Because in the current scenario, a lot of organizations are looking at digitally transforming internally within themselves. That how do we I mean, is it about utilizing digital technologies? Is it about the transformation which is important? Where does one start if they have to apply for digital transformation or have to proceed for digital transformation?
Yeah, I mean, I've often said that there's sort of probably about 6 elements to truly digitally transforming, and the starting point is essentially to digitize everything. So to get rid of paper once and for all within these processes. It seems amazing to say this in 2023, but certainly if you came to the National Health Service in England, you would still find elements of process within many healthcare settings being handled on paper-based solutions, being passed around between parts of different departments and things like that. So I don't think we can do anything until we've got to a place where everything is digitized. I think that's kind of step one. And I think, if I was going into a healthcare organisation again now, I'd be saying, okay, what are the bits of the process here that are still handled manually? I can tell you, for example, I'm under treatment at the moment from a hospital locally in Gloucestershire in England, and I get my appointment bookings on a letter, as in on paper, in an envelope, that come through the door of my house for a time and a date that I've not chosen. So the hospital has decided when they want to see me, when they're ordained to see me, and then they send me that on a piece of paper, and it comes through there's nothing in my life, nothing else in my life happens like that, with so little choice, with so little sort of engagement, with so little sort of digital interaction. So, first things first, get those basic processes digitized. I think the second part of the journey, when you've done that, and a lot of people have done that, is the interoperability piece I described. So you may well have digitized, but chances are you've got information in silos. And so then the focus is on, okay, how do you start to sort of remove those silos and begin to share that information appropriately across care settings? And I think, to be absolutely honest, if healthcare spent the next 5 years just focusing on those two challenges, we would have moved a quantum leap forward from where we are today. And, frankly, laid the foundation for many of the more exciting agenda that are over the hill. I saw a question pop up there. Somebody was asking about how artificial intelligence and advanced intelligence gets involved in healthcare. And I think we're starting to see elements of that through through some automated interaction with patients and things like that. But for me, that's all still sort of day 3 type stuff. I still think we're in day 1, and let's really concentrate on getting our core foundations finished first, and then build the exciting future off the back of that.
Sure. Thanks, Andy. Thanks.
So we have another question, Andy, from the audience. So how can we integrate AI into digital transformation?
Yeah, well, as I was saying, I think we've started to see elements of that, certainly around sort of decision support processes, things like that. I don't know if folks are familiar with the Babylon Health story here, but Babylon Health are an interesting company that sprung up a few years ago, basically offering online general practice consultations, and underpinning their interaction, when you saw it through the doctor's lens, the screen the doctor was using, there was a bunch of sort of AI algorithms sitting there that was supporting them, and as the patient mentioned their various symptoms, the AI processing was sort of working out the potential conditions that this could relate to, and sort of giving the doctor a few hints on likely, I don't know, the likelihood of it being disease X versus disease Y, and what questions to ask next and things like that. So we've started to see some of that beginning to happen, and I think it is it's an interesting taster of what a really exciting future could look like. For me, it's this sort of, I'm still stuck in this slightly sort of weird place between this, how do we finish the journey that we've started in the traditional space, and also mobilise in that more exciting AI-based future. But that's just one example of where I think it'll get to.
Okay, and we have another question: how government policies and regulations impact this implementation of digital transformation?
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. I cough when I get involved in the government. I honestly have not got long enough to describe the frustrations in the way some of the government policies have been blockers. But I think at times where there could be supportive, I think is largely around implementation of standards. So I think one of the ways the health service has really not helped itself has been around the way technical standards have been adopted across multiple vendors or across multiple health organisations. If you compare it to some other industry, compare it to finance. We can all take one of these to anywhere in the world. We can stick it in a machine in a hole in the wall, and we can get money out. We can get our money out wherever we are in the world. How have we achieved that? How's the finance industry achieved that? Well, it's achieved it by agreeing a set of global standards for the use of debit and credit cards, right down to the thickness of the card, right down to the size, the shape, the position of the chip, all the rest of it. And they've, as a result, given us an incredible customer service. This service where we can go anywhere in the world. and access our own bank account and access our own money. In healthcare, we've not done that. We've got two hospitals in the same city deploying different electronic patient records, all built on completely different technical standards that make it hard for them to share information across those areas. I think if the government and generally the sort of regulator has got a role to play in the digital space, then I would love to see them start to dictate a bit more about the technical standards that need to be adopted, and frankly, force healthcare organisations and force software vendors to be compliant around those technical standards, and enable us to join this stuff up in a in an easier way. And that could be a really positive role a government regulator could actually play.
Right. So our next question is,
Can
what
read
is
it.
more efficient for digital transformation? Central organization control or network of small autonomous departments, bodies working for a given goal?
Yeah, I can say Anuji's asking a juicy question there, actually, and I suspect he might already know the answer to this one. So I've been kind of party to both of those models. We had a program in between 2000 and 2012 in the United Kingdom called the National Program for IT, that was the single biggest digital transformation program the planet's ever seen, about £12.4 billion investment in digital transformation, and it very much was the central organisation controlled model. Ultimately, it failed. It failed quite spectacularly. It delivered probably 20 to 30% of its ambition, but no more than that. Largely because it is simply too complicated and too big to manage from one location, especially when you're starting from an installed base, by which I mean you're not starting from a blank sheet of paper, you're starting from an existing landscape that is incredibly complicated. So I definitely, to come to Anush's question, I definitely lean towards the network of small autonomous entities operating, but I would caveat that. I would say they can't be a free-for-all. It can't be the Wild West. It can't be everybody going off and creating their own version of digital healthcare. It's got to be within some kind of controlled, structured architecture that includes controlled and structured standards. So I think, to answer that question specifically, it is a network of small autonomous departments, really given, targeted goals to achieve. But those goals must be delivered within a set of regulations, within a set of consistent standards to make sure that they can then be integrated into the bigger picture.
Okay, thank you so much, Andy. I hope this answers the questions to all the participants. Okay, thank you so much, Andy, for such a insightful discussion and information on digital transformation in the healthcare industry.
Well, it's my pleasure, and thanks, thanks for inviting me to come and, talk to you guys. I wish you all success. I think my sort of parting words often in conversations like this are, don't make the mistake of thinking we're ever going to finish this journey. All we're ever doing is carrying the baton around the track to hand to the next athlete and carry on running. So I'd encourage you all to, keep up the good fight, keep the enthusiasm going, and go on, deliver stuff in your sector and make healthcare the best it can be. But don't be too upset if you don't finish the journey, because there'll be somebody coming along behind you to pick up the baton and carry on running.
Right. So thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much, Andy.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, everyone.
you.